This is the magicwordpodcast.com.
Hello, this is Scott Wells for the magicwordpodcast.com. This week's episode was actually recorded earlier this year in 2023 when I was in Columbus, Ohio for the Magifest. It was a little bit cold and snowy then, and my guest I had talked with was Kyle Purnell, who you will hear this week on this episode. But as I am recording this, I am actually out of town, out of my normal domicile, and I had just this last week you had heard the episodes that I had recorded from the floor of the convention for the Winter Carnival in Pigeon Forge, which was a lot of fun. And this week I am actually out in Hollywood, California at the Magic Castle, where I'm having just a great time performing in the parlor. So obviously you could imagine while I'm out here there will be some upcoming episodes featuring some of the friends and guests who will be on upcoming episodes. Just it's a wealth of magicians out here and people that you would like to hear on the podcast. And so I'm trying to get to as many as I can here while I'm here this week. But this one that you're hearing this week is one that I wanted you to hear because it has been kind of sitting here percolating for a little while. And I will be presenting another one who was another performer that was and part of the talent that was at the Magifest from earlier this year also. Anyhow, that's coming up next week. But this week, we're going to be having a therapy session, if you will, with Kyle Purnell. And I say that, and that's why I've entitled this particular episode On the Couch, because about halfway into our conversation, we get into a little bit of detail about some emotional and mental issues and some things that some people encounter. And if you are one of the people who happen to have obsessive compulsive disorder or OCD or perhaps ADD or something like that, perhaps this might be something that would be of interest to you, to hear a little bit about someone else's struggle with that and how he had it diagnosed and how he is handling that and how he also has been using this to good means. That is, he hasn't let it harm his creative muscle, if you will. In fact, in a way, it's kind of been an advantage for him to actually have this compulsion where he just can't put something down. He has to work with it all the way through and come up with an idea and then another idea, then another idea. But anyhow, a lot of this we're going to be talking about as well. And if you have anybody in your family who might have this type of disorder, you might have a little bit better understanding after you've heard this episode about kind of what this is all about. Well, I'm no doctor, but I play one on TV. No, but I do want to introduce my guest this week, who is going to talk about his creativity and some of the ideas that he's had, and also when he had gone on Penn Teller Fool Us and some of the other things that he's done. He's got a penguin lecture, he's got an at the table lecture from Murphy's, and has I think at the start of a promising career. He is a young man and has another full-time job as a teacher. Yeah, he's going to talk a lot about all that. But I just kind of want you to know up front kind of what's going to be a summary of what you'll be hearing a little bit here in this particular episode. And so I know you're going to enjoy it. So please welcome my guest this week, Mr. Kyle Purnell, here on The Magic Word. Today we are with Kyle Purnell, who is a young man who has such a bright future, and he's had a bright past as well, because he's a bright lad. Here we go. So he is someone who perhaps you may have seen on Penn Teller Fool Us. You may have seen him on some other kinds of shows. As we speak right now, he is actually about to be broadcast on the Penn Teller Fool Us show, but by the time that you would hear this in the future, this will have come and gone, and there will have been other opportunities for you perhaps to see him as well, because hopefully he'll be every place. We are recording this now while we are at the Magifest in early January, or mid-January, I guess, in Columbus, Ohio, where it's snowy outside. But the point is, I really wanted to talk with Kyle. I've known him for a short time, probably 2 years or so, and I feel like he's just a son from another mother. You know, He is such a kind and loving spirit. But as far as magic goes, and why I think you should know him, dear listeners, because he has such a creative mind and has so many cool ideas out already. And I know that with the world being his oyster, and his creativity knows no bounds. So I would highly recommend that if you see or hit an opportunity to buy something that he has created, grab it, because it's something that is commercial and a lot of times improvisational, impromptu. So you'll love it. I'm gone on enough. Let me introduce my guest right here. Here he is, Kyle Purnell. Hey there, Kyle.
Hey, Scott. How are you?
Fantastic. So good to have you over here to chat for a while, and I appreciate your time. And you have had just a lot of different ideas that you've been developing over a period of time. Now, you're only at this point, what, 25?
No, 32.
32. Okay, you look like such a young fella.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's because the hat's covering up the receding hairline. And I wear black so you can't see my dad bod.
Well, you get older, and you're more like, ho, me. So, but you have been developing things, I assume, since you probably were in high school.
Yeah, it was when I first got the magic bug, it was almost at the exact same time I found out that, people can create magic tricks. Mm-hmm. And it was just, that was even more enchanting to me, that someone can use their brain to come up with a method, like a new method to fool someone else, and how satisfying that must feel. This is what I was thinking back then. How satisfying must it feel to like fool somebody with your own trick? Uh-huh. So then, I started trying to create stuff, and I sucked. I was awful. Of course I was, right?
That's why we all start.
Right,
and some of us never go beyond that. And I say us, including myself.
Oh, but it was... it was quite the journey, but it was one of those things that, I sucked, but I refused to believe that. And so now I'm finally getting to the point where I might actually be as good as I think I am.
Well, you're never going to have success without experienced failures.
Yeah.
And you can't be discouraged by those failures. They should actually embolden you to create something different. It's like, oh, well, that didn't work, so it doesn't. I mean, it's just like Edison and many other inventors that we had these 1,000 that didn't work, but the next one might.
Right.
Do you find that to be the case whenever you're coming across some idea? I mean, do you put that aside, or do you keep working on it? Or?
No, I don't think any trick is
finished.
Is never finished, right? It's a good recall there. But it was also, but I also don't believe anything is beyond reproach either. So, like, even if you have like a little tiny idea that is not workable, I always come back to it. Not structured, not intentionally, just I always have it. I mean, I'm not type A, right? I don't have any good organizational system at all. I lose things, everything. I mean, like, my life is literally a mess.
So you're a regular guy.
So I'm a regular guy. And
not OCD or any kind of issue?
Actually, I was diagnosed with OCD in 2020. Okay. Huh. And we can talk about that too. But that's one of those things, because if from the outside looking in, I don't look like the poster boy for OCD.
No.
My socks rarely match. My car is an absolute disaster. But I have OCD, and it was very difficult. But to get back to your original point, it was one of those things where I don't keep like a journal, and I don't keep a notepad. I've tried, but my brain just doesn't work that way, and I just keep a log of things in my head.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's all up there, and eventually it'll come out like at night. You'll dream of something.
I mean, I always think of ideas like right before I go to sleep, and then I'll think of something old that wasn't finished, and then go back to it with kind of a fresh mind and look at it in kind of a different lens, and then often it happens the second or third time around. Do
you pick up something and say, I can do something with this, or are you struck by something when you're walking through a hardware store? Or
yeah, well, you know what? So I know this is not my structure at all, but Spidey said
he's got a lot of stuff on YouTube. Man.
Yeah, oh, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
And at one of his lectures, he talked about how you can frame different kinds of methods of creating. You can have prop-based creators, you can have effect-based creators, you can have method-based creators, and you can have presentation-based creators. These are all his examples. He said, like, Jay Sankey is a method-based creator. He learns one method and then he applies it to like 1,000 different things.
That's true. That's your point.
Yeah, and then again, this is his. But he said, like, Kalen Morelli is a prop-based creator. Like, he looks at a fork and he says, "What are 12 things that I can do with this fork?" Right. For me, I don't know if I fit into any one of those cleanly, but I would call myself like an image-based creator. So I'll have an image of something, not necessarily even an effect, but like an image in my head. Like, for example, like there's one that I still haven't worked out yet, but I have this image of a mental packet trick with just 4 blank cards, and I don't know what the effect is. I just know I want something with that. I don't know what the effect is. I don't know what the method is, but I love the idea of just bringing out 4 blank cards and something mental will happen with it. So like I get that image with it, and then I just kind of marinate on that until something might happen. It still hasn't happened yet, so maybe this time next year I'll have
something with that. So would they be like, when you're thinking of that 4 blank cards that you would show to somebody to begin with, or that wouldn't be until the end when you reveal 4 blank cards?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. We don't know.
You just know that's going to be part of the prop.
That's going to be part of the prop, and I believe that there's going to be something written on the cards.
Gotcha.
At the end, so it could be a magical printing. It might be that I only show like one side of the cards, and then when I show the other side, it was like there the whole time kind of thing, and it might reveal like a 994 and it's a named year or something like that. I don't have a method for that yet because that'd be a sick trick. But that's kind of where I am. Like I'm not purely prop based or purely effect based or purely method based, but more of like an image or an aesthetic that I want to bring across. Like for like Lightyear, I love the idea of just a lot of holes and a bunch of cards.
Explain that, Lightyear. I was about to come up with that.
Yeah.
And since that will have already been broadcast, you can explain what the effect is.
Yeah. So Lightyear is, you have 8 acrylic tiles, and they all have random patterns of holes in them.
And the acrylic tiles are the size of poker size.
About they're slightly bigger, but about that. And a number is either written down or just overtly named, and when you line up the tiles with apparently doing nothing, the holes line up and they align to make the exact number that was named.
Okay.
And you can see it through the light. You can project it on a wall. You can shine light through the phone. Really, whatever you'd like to do. So like things have been done with holes and reveals before, but I believe this is the first like comprehensive system that's been built in that you can make pretty much any number, any 2-digit number under 100.
Wow, under 100. Wow, 2-digit. That is amazing. Now, were you influenced by inventing that trick, perhaps by like when you were a kid of having like a light constellation on your ceiling or something, or what came?
No, not really. No, I was mostly inspired by 2 things for that. I was inspired by, there's that stellar card clip that it's like a card clip for your deck of cards, but it has a bunch of holes in it. When you shine light through it, it looks like a starry night sky. And then when there's some mechanism, I suppose, or maybe you do it at a different angle. I don't even have the trick, to be honest with you, but it reveals a forced card.
Okay.
Which is cool, but you can't really repeat it.
Yeah,
right?
It's just one
thing. And the other thing I was inspired by, there's an old Jay Sankey trick called, the Pulp Fiction deck.
Okay.
It's not one of his more popular ones, but it was really interesting. And his was a deck of cards, and they all have just like these weird shapes cut out of them. It's just like this wacky deck of cards. And a card is selected. Actually, 2 cards are selected. And then when the cards are squared up, all the shapes go through together to make the shape of the card.
Oh, okay.
So if it's the Ace of Hearts, it makes one big heart in the middle, and it goes all the way through. And then there's like a 2 of diamonds. But again, it's 2 force cards. Doesn't take away from it. That's still a crazy effect. It's really cool. But I think those weren't necessarily intentional inspirations. I think they were just kind of subconsciously floating around in my head, and then looking back on it, I can say, oh yeah, that was definitely an inspiration. That was an inspiration too. But yeah, both those together, and I thought I really value in making a method. I really value no wasted movements or space. So, like for example, I don't like fake writing something like right. So like if I have something written on a business card and it's pre-written just so I don't have to write something, and I'm just pretending to write, that's wasted motion to me, right? So if I'm going to write something but it's already written because I'm going to force it or something, well, why don't I actually write something else? Something I couldn't have known, like the person's name if I just met them, right? And then you can switch it out and do whatever you want there, but I don't want any wasted motion. So I forget where I was going with that actually. We were talking about something prior to that.
Well, you were talking about the development of that,
Yeah.
but you took a couple of different tricks and put them together.
Yeah. So thank you. So with Jay Sankey's trick, it just seemed like there was a lot of opportunity there because all these cards have different holes. Well, they weren't holes, but they're just like weird shapes,
like lines
and
and things. Like
yeah, and it was a great trick. But I'm like, okay, but like if you're going to put all these in here anyway, what if we had more intention in them? Like, because like all the other holes are just kind of red herrings. They don't mean anything.
They're random holes.
They're random holes.
On a card, right?
But what if we can make a system where every single hole is intentional? It's planned. It's meticulous. It's calculated. And then if that's the case, then we could actually make a comprehensive system to make that happen. You probably could make a version with playing cards, but then I realized, well, numbers are interesting because I always like to wring that magic sponge, right? So like try to get as much effect out of as much little method as possible.
I love that analogy and that visual, wring that magic sponge.
Yeah. And you just squeeze it out as much as you can. So like if you think of a 2-digit number, it seems, and I'm not going to give anything away here, but like conceptually, if you think about it, it seems like you would have to put in like 100 different permutations to get everything else. But really, a 2-digit number is made up of 2 1-digit numbers, and there's really only
18?
10 things that you can do with one digit and 10 things for the other digit. So if you have them in 2 different piles, you're really minimizing what you have to do to create the illusion that it can make any number under 100. So that's kind of what I mean here, because like you probably could build more into the system and make it so you can make a 3-digit number. You can make it with only one pile, but that would be a lot more to think about in the system, and it would be a lot harder to learn. And this is just very simple, and the effect goes across the same way, but it's a lot more direct and a lot less method. Right.
And with this Light Force, that's something that you have commercially available then too? Or?
Lightyear. Yeah. It's commercially available. You can buy it at a lot of different dealers, but it's produced through Penguin.
Was it available before you had filmed Penn Teller?
No. We filmed it in May, and it came out in September. The product came out in September. So when I filmed it, no one really knew about it.
They hadn't seen it.
Yeah.
Unless they perhaps had, like I think I saw you do that at TRICS.
At TRICS. Yep. So
just for a few people. Yeah.
Yeah. If you saw me at a convention, you might have seen me do it. But
Teller wasn't hanging out there. So.
Well, I mean, probably. I mean, I didn't hear him at least.
Yeah. That's true. Well, now that and so leading up to that, what about how did you get on there? As far as did you submit several ideas or talk to Mike Killos? Or?
I've been trying to get on that show for years.
Have you?
Yeah, and it's one of those things where on the micro level, I'm doing things that are different than a lot of other magicians, but on a macro level, I'm a white guy doing card tricks, right? Which is pretty standard, right? That's a lot of what makes up our demographic, right?
Right.
And so it was hard for me to stand out, and so I needed to really rely on something really unique that I knew they haven't seen before. So I pitched Lightyear to them because I know they haven't seen it before, and they actually came back to me and they said, so like, do these cards exist like on the market, and you just made an effect with them? Like maybe it's just like a puzzle stack of cards that you framed as a magic trick, and I had to tell them that no, like I designed it from the ground up to submit to you guys. And I think that was the turning point. They said, oh well, maybe this is something special, and we should have you on.
Right. And how many cards are in this deck?
It's like 8.
Eight cards altogether, so they're just like 4 and 4, whatever.
4 and 4, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And so, since this will have already aired, did you fool them?
I did not get a trophy, at least.
Did not get a trophy?
It was all a rush. It was all, a whirlwind, so I could be misremembering, so forgive me. So by the time everybody's listening to this, this might not actually be the case. I might be misremembering, but I'm pretty sure that they said that I fooled one of them.
Okay.
I fooled one of them, just not as a duo, as a unit.
One kind of figured out the method.
Yeah. So, at the very least, that's going to give me some good, a good clickbait thumbnail.
That's true, and some cred, I think, as well. Is that something that you were using as a launch pad, where you want to perhaps book some other conventions? You have some other shows, or thinking perhaps on the corporate market? I'm now exposed to a wider audience. Or what was your
really
motivation?
All? Yeah, I plan on going full time in the next year and a half or so.
You're currently doing what?
I'm a speech therapist in a school.
Okay,
and I am planning on going full time in the next year and a half. And one of my goals was to get a national TV exposure, so that way that it'll be easier to get gigs and put up that on my promotional material, and just hopefully be more desirable as an entity.
And hopefully there's some other things that might come about.
Absolutely.
Master's Illusion, some other things
Yeah,
we've talked about.
Absolutely.
Down the road that will happen and put you more in the public spotlight.
Sure.
I assume that you have, like many of us, been called by AGT to come. Have
Once.
you thought about that?
Yeah, I have thought about it. I'm not 100% against it, but I just know that a show like Masters of Illusion or Penn and Teller, they
treat magic with respect.
Treat magic with respect, and they want magic to look good.
Correct.
And AGT wants good television, whatever
Big
that
difference,
means.
isn't it?
Whatever that means, right? And I don't want to. I don't want me or what I do, or really any magician, to be seen in a negative light just because it makes compelling TV.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I would agree with that. Now, the type of magic, though, you do seems to be close-up and improvisational. As I said, an impromptu where you can do something at the bar. I mean, the dollar bill tricks and things you teach, they're things that are just kind of lying around, and that's what I like. And going back to Penn and Teller and Fool Us for a minute, as I understand it, I remember Mike Close talking about how that they really are trying to get away from card tricks because everybody's bringing them card tricks, but they still have like about 2/3, or rather a third of their tricks that people present or they show on television are still card tricks. They're looking for something a little bit different. Like that. So that's why I thought the dollar bill might be kind of a little bit interesting.
I submitted that too a few years ago.
Okay.
And I didn't hear back from them that year, and it could have just fell through the cracks. It's one of the things that I probably will submit to other shows in the future.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's one of those things. I guess we're kind of like retrofitting, right? So like it's an effect that exists, and it might be okay for TV, but there's probably a better way to do that method that's designed for TV. Now, if a producer likes it and says no, we want this, then absolutely, I'd be happy to do it though.
I guess ultimately what I'm trying to get to is, as a young person and trying to make a career of this, there are a lot of other young people who do close-up magic, and I think because the entry level, I should say, the money that is required is a lot less than having to buy big illusions and train assistants and travel and back and all that. So it's easier. However, aside from trade shows, hospitality suites, cocktail parties, strolling, restaurant magic, what specific type of audience or venue or
Yeah, I'm looking to do more conventions, of course.
Magic conventions, in particular. Okay.
Magic conventions. I really do love performing for magicians, and I know that might not be a popular opinion, but I really do love performing for magicians because magicians have magic etiquette as spectators. Like, a magician's never going to be difficult. Unless,
they don't intentionally bust you.
Yeah, they're not going to say, "No way, it's in the other hand." You know, they know it's in the other hand, but they'll appreciate how well you did the move, right? Yeah. And I really appreciate that. I love performing for lay people as well, but there's something really nice about performing for magicians and knowing that they will appreciate it in a different perspective. Than a lay audience might, but I also am hoping to break into like the wedding cocktail hour sector. Because where I am in like central Pennsylvania, there's not a lot of that. I mean, it's huge over in the UK, but where we are, there's really not. But I think there is a need. I think as far as events go, I think weddings need magicians more than any other event because they are really. It's a unique service we provide because we are close up and intimate, providing and we're there for a purpose. We're providing a service of getting people to talk during an awkward time where the bridal party is usually away. Everyone's getting hungry. A lot of people don't know each other because they're only here because their spouse is here, but their spouse is in the wedding party, and so it's actually an important purpose that a strolling magician serves to get people to talk, to get people to have time pass quicker until the meal starts, and that and I feel like that's what I want because I really it's not just about doing tricks, it's about really still being an important part of an event, and I think in addition to being the entertainment, which is important in its own right, it actually serves a separate purpose.
I wish you the best of luck, and I hope you're the guy who breaks through that market because that's absolutely everything you said is correct because what magicians can do during that time, you have two different families, you have disparate parties, basically, of different ages, from grandma to infancy, basically, quite literally, and so when you're going from table to table, magic is a great icebreaker and conversation starter and something that people talk about during that time when it is kind of awkward in between while they're taking pictures or whatever. So you got a little period of time over there. But the issue is that I have found is most brides in America have all their lives as a child been called, "Hey, princess," and well, now they're the queen for a day. And everything is all about them. The dress, the hair, the makeup. I mean, as far as the guy, it's like, "Hey, I'll show up and I'll be there. I'll go red and top." Sure. But the woman buys a dress and does all this, it's all about her. And the point is that if a magician is so good, they don't want somebody to say, "Man, that was a great part of that magician was fantastic," as opposed to saying, "Didn't she look beautiful? Wasn't her dress, whatever."
Absolutely.
And so, it's hard to try to minimize yourself. And that's why I always, whenever I occasionally do these things, and I push hard to do this. I was even in the New York Times. They were talking about alternate types of entertainment, not just DJs, but other kinds of things. And they had contacted me to talk about an alternate type of entertainment because they found my website that I was trying to push and still am with weddings. I haven't done maybe a dozen in my life, and I push hard. And I've even been ordained, so I can marry people, and then afterwards say, "Hey, I can stick around and entertain you as well."
I also I ordained my sister's wedding this summer. I mean,
officiated there,
officiated, yes, officiated.
You were efficient.
Yeah, you can tell that I'm very highly trained in this area. They just said, "Here, just fill out this form," and I'm like, "Now you're ordained." I'm like, "This feels skeezy, but okay."
Reverend Purnell. Yeah, there we go. Well, with that, you can buy whatever. You could even buy a saint. You could buy yourself as a pope. I think there are different kinds of things.
That's crazy.
But how do you expect to break into that market? I agree with you 100% as far as how big it is. That is huge over in the UK. But likewise, restaurants is big over here, but it's not over there.
Right. Yeah. I think that it's about the material that you present. And making it about making it about bringing people together and connection, and with the bride and groom, make it specifically about the bride and specifically about the groom, or sorry,
the bride,
more about the bride,
correct,
and that's and make it personalized, like do the extra work beforehand to, gimmick up a photo or something like that, where it's really going to show that it is about them and it's not about.
I've done that, like with the Torn to Pieces kind of a thing with the picture of them. I'll have them signed, they get to keep it. Or, of course, the anniversary waltz trick is perfect. I mean, all kinds of things,
Yeah, it might not go as well as I'm hoping, but I really
there's a market there.
There's a market, and obviously I'm gonna start doing like wedding shows, and
I've done those.
Yeah,
and they come over and love you. It's like, let me see this, because they have other people there have cakes, and you're tasting their cakes, and photographers or DJs or whatever at these wedding planning seminars, and they come and watch the magic, and I pass out the cards, and it's kind of, I don't know. I just haven't had success any way I've tried, but that's why I say you may be the guy to break this.
Maybe it's possible.
I hope you do. I'm not trying to discourage. I'm trying to encourage you.
Yeah, sure.
I've tried this, hasn't worked for me in my area, but hopefully it will.
Here's hoping. I think that can be a good market, and
Absolutely.
I think a lot of weddings need it.
Well, it's like bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. Now they do pay a lot because they're paying a lot for that child for that one special time of their life, and that's very important to them. So that's a big market. Obviously, in some place like in New York City, I understand that there are a lot of people who do all those, and other parts of the country as well. I've done my share just in Houston area as well. It's just an expanded birthday party. It's a lot bigger, but they pay a whole lot more. And weddings do as well because they put aside thousands of dollars for whatever.
Right.
So it's a good market, I think.
Sure. Yeah,
tap into. I'm sorry, we kind of got twisted off, but I really wanted to go into some detail about that because I think that is a great potential market, and I hope that it opens up in the U.S. so it'll be open for more people.
Absolutely.
I wanted to circle back to what you had said about OCD for just a moment.
Yeah, sure.
You said you were diagnosed just 2 years ago, and here you are at 37, and you had
almost,
not been. Did you think that earlier, or what?
No, it was. I didn't know what it was. I had a lot of invasive thoughts, which I suppose we all do to some degree. But most people, from my understanding, I'm not most people, so I don't know for sure, but I imagine most people, they get a intrusive thought or invasive thought that they don't want to think, and most people are probably like, you shouldn't be there, get out of here, and then they can. I couldn't do that. And I would get the thought in my head, and I would ruminate, and I would obsess on it, and I would start believing that I was this monster, this horrible person for even entertaining this thought in my head. And I couldn't shake it. And I mean, and basically the game was, my brain was saying, okay, what is the worst thing that I can think that Kyle is? And now I'm going to convince him that that's true.
Wow.
And it was hell, and it affected my life at home, affected my marriage, it affected my hygiene, and it was really, really bad.
How old were you at the time?
It was just a few years ago, so I'm 32 now. So I was almost 30.
Okay.
Yeah, and because it was almost 3 years ago, and it was. I finally was able to get on a list to go see a psychiatrist. At first, I just thought it was anxiety, but I'm like, I hear a lot of other people with anxiety talk about it, and like, this is still weird. Like, even for anxiety, it's still weird. Like no one's talking about this, and I had no idea what it was. And I finally got to talk to a psychiatrist, and he gave me a full evaluation, and he was very certain that by what I was describing, that it was OCD. And I'm like, Doc, you don't know what you're talking about. OCD is when you wash your hands all the time and check to see if the oven's on, and
you square up pictures on the wall.
Exactly. Like, I don't do that. Like, you don't know me. Like, my socks never match. My car's a disaster. I have no organizational system at all. I can't have OCD. And he said, well, let me tell you. OCD is made up of obsessions and compulsions. And you can kind of think of it like obsessions is kind of the cause and the compulsions is the effect.
That's what OCD stands for.
Yeah. Obsessive and compulsive disorder, right? And I thought it was just like, it could be obsessions, it could be compulsions, whatever that is. No, but like apparently, and it makes total sense now, obsessions are those thoughts that come in your head. Now, it can be a whole gamut of things, but obsessions can come in your head, and you can't shake it. You can't stop thinking about whatever it is. So, like, for example, like the obsession might be, did I leave the stove on? Did I leave the stove on? Did I leave the stove on? I feel like I left the stove on.
Mm-hmm.
And the compulsion would be, you have to go check every 5 minutes.
I understand that.
2 minutes, right? That's not me. I don't care. I assume it's off, and so it manifests. Like, my OCD is not like the trope that people think of when it comes to OCD.
Yeah, like the TV show Monk.
Yeah, and we were just talking about Monk. Actually, I love Monk. It's like probably my favorite show of all time, and I absolutely relate to him in a lot of ways because, like, he's pretty dysfunctional outside of the one thing he's really good at.
That's true. But when he walks down the street, he has to touch the parking meters and everything.
Like, outside of being a detective, he's like completely dysfunctional. But when he's being a detective, he's like one of the best, right?
Focused.
Yeah, and that's where he shines. And my life, there's many things I'm not good at, but when I come to Magifest, I'm with my people and I'm in my element.
Yeah.
I feel like this is where I thrive, and it's that same kind of thing. So I do relate to him in that capacity, but those the specific obsessions and compulsions that are dictated in that are depicted in that show are not me. For me, it's really just obsessive, invasive thoughts, and then I started realizing, I do have compulsions too, because I just didn't have a name for it. But often, when I would get these vile thoughts in my head, I would want to get rid of it. So what I would do, and it wasn't even conscious, I would say, I would just repeatedly say a mantra in my out loud, actually. And the mantra was the name of two people in my life that I love, that I don't want to disappoint, and that's Jesus and my wife Kelsey. And so in my head, it was just it wasn't just in my head, it was like under my breath, and sometimes out loud. I didn't even know I was doing it. I would just say, Jesus, Kelsey, Jesus, Kelsey, Jesus, Kelsey, Jesus, Kelsey, and to try to convince myself that, hey, I'm not that bad of a guy. If I was that bad of a guy, I wouldn't be saying these two people's names that are awesome, right?
Right.
And it was just, again, it wasn't a conscious choice. It would just happen. And I only kind of looked back in retrospect and realized, that absolutely is a mantra, which is a type of compulsion. And
you found that helped?
No, not at all. No, it was just a natural reaction to the obsession. That's part of the disorder. Yeah.
I see.
So the obsession was the thought, the compulsion was my mantra, and it was part of the problem. And so I went to therapy. I got on meds, and now I'm the thoughts are still there for sure, but it's crazy how well meds work, because now I'm at a point where I'm like, I can just roll it off, and like,
it doesn't dull your senses?
They'll come in. No. Well, see, and the thing was, I was scared to death that because my psychiatrist, he said, so Kyle, I know that you are you are a magic inventor and you do all this stuff, and it's my job is hard. This is what he said. My job is hard because I will give you these meds and they will help you, or the invasive thoughts, but they also might dampen what you're doing, because OCD can have some positive attributes to it, right? The obsession is why I have a lot of these ideas. I wouldn't consider myself all that creative. I would consider myself obsessive, and I can't stop thinking about something when I start. And so when I have these ideas, I just ruminate on them, and it leads to something positive, but that's only in one area, and the rest of it it felt like I was dragged to the pits of hell,
Wow.
And I just couldn't stop thinking about these vile things. And so I got on the meds, I went to therapy, and now it's a lot better. It's very much managed now.
And so they manage that through your meds and therapy both as well, you're saying. So they kind of fine-tune whatever, so you're able to eliminate the obsessions?
Well, and even just, with the idea of just having a label is so helpful.
No.
Right?
To be finally diagnosed. Oh, that's what it is. I can see that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not an evil monster.
Yeah.
I'm not vile. It's a diagnosis. It's something that's inflicting me. I'm not choosing to do this.
It's a disorder and not just something I own. Other people have this in the world
exactly.
as well.
And then I started looking up some things, and I won't go into all the details here, but all these really obscure, idiosyncratic things that I thought were only specific to me. There's no way anyone else is experiencing this. Mm-hmm. Like the really specific weird stuff. There are subcategories of OCD, mm-hmm. and I related to those, and it was crazy. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe how many people actually suffered the way I was suffering.
So do you feel that your life is free now, that you're able to go out into the world and not really worry about it? You can
100%.
You can still stay focused on something and create and whatever,
well,
and then put it aside.
That's the thing. The meds didn't actually dampen
that's great news.
The stuff I was worried about that it would.
Yeah.
And I mean, 100%. I mean, I'm never going to be at 100%, but it's 100% better than what it was. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that related at all to Asperger's or some other kinds of autism? Or
it's funny you asked that. I would have thought no, but the way my psychiatrist said is that OCD is kind of like a cousin to the autism spectrum. Like it's not on the autism spectrum.
It's not on the spectrum, though.
It's not on the spectrum, mm-hmm. but there are definitely similarities, and they are related in a fairly distant way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'm glad that things are moving along and moved on, and that you kind of recognize that. And it's like, okay, now I can move on to my life because that's what I got, and I know it, and I can move from there.
Sure.
And you can get it resolved through meds and therapy. And so that's great. That was really good news. So here things are going smoothly, or much more smoothly with you than in the future. And that's something that you'll be on, I guess, the rest of your life, mm-hmm. kind of a thing. It's kind of like blood pressure medicine or whatever kind of a thing.
And I'm fine with that, man.
So it does not affect you physically. It's just
kind
mental.
of actually. Well, not that those meds in particular, but then I started going on another antidepressant,
mm-hmm.
Wellbutrin, and it gives me a hand tremor, which
that can't be good for magic.
Well, that's what I thought, and I thought, well, if they would have told me this before I started going on Wellbutrin, I would have said no, thank you.
Sure,
but they didn't. Obviously, everybody's different. They didn't know it would manifest that way in my body, so I started taking it and started having a little bit of hand tremor. But when I start, doing the magic and having contact with the props, it goes away. It's just when mm-hmm. it's like empty.
Right.
There's a little bit of a tremor sometimes.
Well, interesting. Well, going back to magic, and that does have a direct impact as far as the tremor and everything. But did you do restaurant magic and things then also around the Pennsylvania area?
Yeah. So I'm the house magician at a hard cider bar. It's a magic-themed hard cider bar called the Grand Illusion. And
did you walk in there thinking, "Hey, this is a Grand Illusion. This is a perfect place for a magician"?
It's really weird. It's really weird how everything came together.
Serendipitous.
It's very serendipitous. I'm not a children's performer, but it was like 2017, and we just moved into our house the year before, and we're trying to be, neighborly to our across the street neighbors who had two young kids, and they found out I was a magician. They said, will you do Ethan's birthday party? And I said, sure.
What are you going to say? You're going to be a bad guy in the neighborhood the rest of the every time you walk out the door, I got to hide my head.
Exactly, right, yeah. So I said yes, and I threw something together. I'm not a kids magician, but I mean, I love kids. I work with kids, but I don't do magic for kids that much.
So nothing at school. Do they know you at school as being a magician?
Oh, yeah, they do, okay. But like I don't do a kids show.
Especially after Penn Teller Fool Us.
Right, yeah. So I did the show, and I'm like, yeah, okay, all right. And one of the parents of one of the kids that was at the party is named Chad Kimmel, who is the owner of Grand Illusion, but no one knew about this. This was before it was open. It was before anyone even knew that this was his brainchild, right? Mm-hmm. So he was working on this and he found out about me. Then he found out that I don't actually do kid shows, but I do what he was looking for.
Oh, interesting.
And I at that point in my head, and this might relate to the OCD too, but in my head I just convinced myself that it's going to be an uphill battle to convince him that I'm actually a lot better than the show that he saw me do, because it was a kid's show and I just threw it together. That was so 5 years ago. almost. In March, it'll be 5 years that Grand Illusion opened, and I've been there since the beginning.
And so you say it's a hard cider bar. I'm assuming they must make their own. Is it a brewery
They do.
kind of a?
They do make their own, not on site, but yeah, they do make their own. It's very good. And they also take in a lot of other ciders from all over the place.
It is all ciders and not
there's
beer.
ciders and
Ales.
ciders and wines, and then they have a few beers as well for those people. But yeah, it's mostly cider and wine.
So do you work behind the bar? Do you work at the tables or?
Every once in a while behind the bar, but mostly table to table. It's more like restaurant magic, even though it is a bar.
Well, it's a great proving ground, of course, for new ideas that you're coming with,
that's
too.
exactly. It's a great place to suck. So I love trying out new material there, and I'm like, okay, well, if this doesn't work, then I won't try it again.
Well, the nice thing also about restaurants is whenever that you do have a client that's coming in saying, can I see you someplace perform publicly? Yep, come on down here. You know, the Grand Illusion.
Absolutely.
And then you'll see, and then you can go and do that. And part of the problem sometimes is after you've then done something like this, so say a cocktail party or somebody, some company, they don't realize that you also do like an after-dinner show.
Right.
Or vice versa. If you've done an after-dinner show, they don't know that you also, it's kind of like, I think with the movies and television, and just in Hollywood in general, they're looking for someone with a certain type, and they only want this and can't think, okay, well, if he shaves his beard, he could look like a completely different person, or dyes hair, or lose weight, or whatever, you know. So similarly, it's the way magicians, I think, are typically pigeonholed, like that. But I assume that you find some work as well, and I assume since, well, it is a bar, so you don't have a lot of kids coming in. They're not saying, hey, we want you to do a birthday party.
Actually, it's family friendly. Yeah,
it is. Okay,
it is. It's weird because
so it's not like a bar.
Well, it is a bar.
True sense.
It's a
restaurant.
That's fair. Yeah, it's a. I mean, I think it's officially considered a bar.
Okay,
but it is a restaurant,
but not by the state where they would prohibit people under 21 from coming in.
They prohibit people under 21 to sit at the bar.
Sit at the bar. Okay, gotcha.
So you have to be 21 to sit at the bar, but families, kids come in all the time. Yeah, especially on Mondays. It's Magic Monday, and that's when the kids come in. And we do kid stuff too.
Do you just do it on Monday or throughout the week?
It's only on Mondays.
Okay,
for now.
That's interesting because typically Monday is not a very busy night for most restaurants. Did they book you to begin with, thinking, "Hey, maybe you'll bring in more people"?
That's exactly why.
Huh.
Yeah.
Did it work out?
Yeah. I mean, Monday's still the slowest day of the week.
Yeah.
But they were comparing it to the closest day to a Monday that did not have magic, and there was significantly more than if there wasn't magic. So they're going to keep me around.
Do they have other type of entertainment, like a jazz band or anything on the weekends or something?
Every once in a while they'll bring in
live entertainment.
Yeah, live entertainment on the weekends.
Yeah.
And then just me every Monday.
It's just the name Grand Illusion. I would expect they would be having magicians all the time.
Well, you would think, but I would think that too, right? And a lot of magicians think that too. But that's because when we see anything related to magic, we're like, it's got to be 100% magic, right? But this is obviously Chad's idea. It's his baby, it's his brainchild, and his idea is very much primarily cider and wine and restaurant, and then very much secondarily theme wise, it's magic.
Okay.
So
and then music below that.
Okay. Yeah. So. Even tonight they're actually having a watch party for my Penn and Teller thing.
Yeah.
I just won't be there.
Are you heading out tonight, or where are you going?
Tonight, I came up with some of my magic buddies from back home, and we're just gonna all get together in my hotel room, get some pizza and brews, and
watch it from there.
Yeah.
Your watch party will be in your room rather than So as I said, we're talking about this then right now that the Penn and Teller. It has not yet aired, so it's going to be tonight. But again, after this broadcast, it will have been long gone. And, and I know you will have achieved some more success, as a result
I'm certainly hoping so, yeah.
of all of that then as well. Well, you really led, in just a short 32 years of having achieved so much. And this is not your first big, well, I guess it's first big convention, 1,000 people.
This is my first big one. It's my third
You've been at TRICS, which is where I met you.
It's my first convention, or it's my third convention lecturing.
Okay.
But it's definitely the biggest one by far. Yeah.
So for people who want to follow you on
Yep.
social media or to perhaps see about getting your lecture notes or any kind
Sure.
of work, can they find you? Or-
Yep, Kyle_Purnell_magic for Instagram, and my website is kylepurnellmagic.com.
okay.
And so you can hit me up and message me on either place, and I'll get back to you.
Are you on YouTube or anything as well? Or?
I am, but
You don't post much stuff there?
it's not much stuff. It's mostly for just like a digital log to say, hey, I did this at this time, and but it's not for. I wouldn't consider myself a YouTuber.
Yeah. I mean, you're not making bank on it.
Sure, not at all. No.
I understand. Well, and again, through your website, can people buy your lecture notes, or do they have to send an email to you if they're interested in
Yeah,
learning some-
you can actually, if you go to my website, there will be a pop-up that says sign up for the newsletter. And if you do that, you will get my never finished lecture notes for free.
Oh, a little PDF.
A digital copy, yep.
Interesting. And you do have, like after you've given your lecture today, you had a lot of things that were going to be available for sale. So I know you have physical things as well.
Yes, of course, yeah.
And you've done a penguin lecture?
I have, yep.
And how did that go? That was mostly close up and just,
Yep, yeah. The penguin lecture was really fun. That was about a lecture called The Scale, and it was about
what does that mean?
the scale is it's just my way of explaining something that I think probably most people already feel and understand, but I wanted to put words to it. How when we're picking a method for an effect, there's no such thing as a perfect method, right? No perfect method. Even in the rare chance that I say name a card and you name like the four of spades, and I happen to have the four of spades in my pocket because I forgot to take it out from last night. That's not a perfect method because you can't repeat it. Right.
Good point.
Right. And so
It's a great trick, but not a perfect method.
Yeah, it's a great trick, but not a perfect method. If it was perfect, I would do it every single time. Right? Priorities on one side of the scale, and there's always sacrifices you're willing to make on the other side of the scale. And as long as your priorities outweigh your sacrifices, then that's probably a method for you. So then I picked effects to kind of illustrate that concept. And then we went over, the priorities for this. So like my pencil through bill or marker through bill that we did today at the lecture. There's a lot of priorities for me. I wanted no gimmicks. I wanted to be able to show both sides of the bill before it goes through and after it goes through. I wanted it immediately examinable.
Right.
And I wanted to look very visual. But the sacrifice for this is it only works with an American $1 bill, so you can't do it 4 and you can't do it with a 20. Right. And the other thing is and you have to fold it twice.
Right.
Yeah, which isn't a big deal. No. It's not a sacrifice. It's no skin off my nose.
Right.
So I would absolutely fold it twice if it means I can have all those priorities. Right. So those sacrifices are not outweighing those priorities. So my scale is tipped this way.
Right.
So that tells me that's probably the method I'm going to choose.
Yeah. Now, you'd said something also during the lecture about the 4 different kinds of things, a big effect.
Oh, yeah.
Method.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Explain that briefly.
There's little method, little effect, big method, big effect, big method, little effect, and little method, big effect.
Yeah. Explain it briefly.
Yeah. So basically, all 4 are valid in their own rights, but there's one I kind of gravitate towards, and that's the last one I said: little method, big effect. And it goes back to wringing out that sponge, right? So you can have an effect like, actually, it's an effect I just bought, which is the inverting mental die, which is right over there.
I've got one of those. I love that.
Yeah, and it's a great trick, and I am excited to start using it. But if you look at it in that framework, it is a lot of method for a little effect. Now, you can use your expertise as a magician to expand that effect, right? So, like, it's
Paul Vigil used something like that, for his opening effect and his close-up for a long time. Yeah,
and
very strong.
It can be very strong, but you have to. But the prop itself, there is a lot of method.
That's true. There's a lot built into that.
There's a lot built into it. Crazy technology to get something that's 1 in 6.
I see.
Right, and that's not by any stretch a critique on it, but when I'm creating something, I try to flip-flop that structure, and I want as much effect out of as little of a method as I can make. Because because I'm not a tech guy. I don't deal with electronics. I mean, yeah, we have dropped call, but that's very, very basic. And that
Drop call, by the way, is another trick that you market, which that the effect is that a phone vanishes, basically.
Yep. Yeah, from the phone case. But even that's little method, even though there is some electronics in it. So when I'm doing stuff, I want little method. I don't want to have to worry about sticking things to something, or I don't want to worry about thread breaking. I don't want to worry about aligning something perfectly if it's a little fiddly, right? I want the more moving parts you eliminate, either physical or proverbial moving parts, the closer you get to a bulletproof effect. So that's the reason that I try to go little method, because the smaller the method you go, the closer you are to bulletproof. And I want my magic to be as bulletproof as possible.
Of course.
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense. That's a good synopsis of some of the things you talked about in your lecture over there. So
yeah, thank you.
I'm not saying that people, now that you've got it, you don't need to go listen to his lecture or buy his notes. That's just a snippet of some of his kind of thinking, and so that was brilliant. Well, as we conclude over here, I thank you again for your time and for you exposing yourself and talking about some personal things, and that was great, and also what you're going to be doing for the future and some of your goals and objectives, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck, and I'm sure that even without me wishing that's going to happen. I've just got such confidence in your success in the
Thank
future.
you so much, Scott.
So the name of my podcast is called The Magic Word. I always like to close. What is it that's your philosophy of life that's important to you? Not necessarily a word, but I mean...
Yeah. Be real to yourself in such the sense that be real, and that's the antithesis to, positive vibes only, or put on a smile, or fake it till you make it, or those are terrible pieces of advice. If you're not having a good day, own it, and be okay with having a not great day, and because then you're going to be very real with yourself. You're going to have that frame of reference, so that way when you have a much better day, you're not going to feel like you're just faking it again.
Yeah.
Right. And you're going to actually, as me working in a school, I think it's terrible advice. Like a few years ago, we had someone in administration say we need everybody here to take a positivity pledge, where you come in here and you pledge to put on a smile, right, and all these things. And yeah, that's a great thing to strive for. That's great, but it is doing a huge disservice to our students if I am faking being perfect and happy, and it's this great little bubble, when we need to tell them, we need to teach our students, sometimes we do have bad days. We have rough days. Sometimes we deal with things, and sometimes I'm not going to come in and smile. And that's okay, because I want to teach you how to deal with your emotions when you inevitably feel this way too when you get older. And
those are life lessons.
Absolutely. And so, and be real in your magic and your performing, and don't pretend that something's better than it is. Don't pretend to be someone that you're not. Be real to yourself. And when you're mad, be mad. When you're sad, be sad. And when you're happy, shout it from the rooftops.
Wow, great advice. Great. It's a good philosophy to live by. Yeah. Thank you very much. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely.
So for the Magic Word Podcast, that was Kyle Purnell. And this is Scotty out. Thank you very much, Kyle, for being my guest this week on this episode, and also for being so open and honest with both me and for the listening audience. I do hope that if there are some people out there who this kind of speaks to, that if you need to get some help, please seek out a proper medical authority and get the help that you need if necessary. But I just thought it was kind of interesting to hear someone else's perspective and how they have dealt with these kinds of issues. So there you go. Again, I'm not a doctor, but if you need one, I hope that you find the help that you need that will help make you better. Well, as I've mentioned in the past, from time to time. I want to encourage you to sign up for our weekly pod letter, which gives you some information about who's on from week to week, who's coming up next week, also some suggestions from the archives. And also, when we have contests, you'll be one of the first to actually learn about the podcast because it's all there in the pod letter. Absolutely free. We don't send you any spam or anything. It just comes out once a week, and it's released simultaneous with these podcast episodes when they go out on Thursdays. So just go to themagicwordpodcast.com, and there you'll see a link or maybe even a pop-up that will say subscribe to our pod letter. Please do. Put in your name and email address, and you'll receive those. One more thing I'd like to mention, since we have talked a little bit about getting help, I could certainly use your financial support in getting around to these different conventions to provide you with the reports that I do, as well as, of course, our domain charges and server equipments, microphones, and everything that we have, batteries even, that we go through a lot when we're out on the road and everything as well. So all these things cost some money, and the Friends of the Magic Word who provide us with financial help through donations and pledges certainly do help us a lot, particularly during a time when, for a few years during COVID, there were some people who were strong supporters financially but had to reduce their support or cut it entirely and have not come back. And so we could certainly use whatever financial support that you could give us. Again, if you go to themagicwordpodcast.com, there you will see a tab that will say, Become a Friend of the Magic Word, and you can watch the video, just a short 3-minute video, and learn why that we could certainly use your support. Well, we have a lot more things coming up that are in the can that we're going to deliver you over the next few weeks. And as I mentioned to begin with, here at the Magic Castle, I will be reporting, or actually recording, some conversations with several magicians, which will be the subject of upcoming episodes. So be sure to stay tuned for those then as well. So until next week, stay well, get booked, and remember to be real to yourself. And if you're having a bad day, then own it. And if you're mad, be mad. But when you're happy, just shout it from the rooftops. This is Scotty out.